to come and meet you all and to learn about your fantastic centre. And we'd just like to present to you some things so that you understand why we exist as an organisation, first of all. We commissioned some studies in East Africa in 2015 and 2016 in 4 countries, in Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda and Kenya. And the studies were looking at data that already existed about women's position in society, in the economy, in health, to try and understand what are the difficulties facing women who would like to do science and technology as a career. We all know, I think that you all know, it's very common knowledge that there are always less women doing science and technology than there are men, and typically the number is very, very low, under 30%, and that number decreases as you go up the career ladder. So the more prestigious the scientist career, the less women do that career. This is a problem because if you do not involve women in science, you're not involving women either in finding the problems, the specific problems that women know about that you face in your society, because you typically are caregivers, you work, you spend your time with children, you are right there in direct line in education, you are involved in water gathering and collection, you have direct links with the community. So if you don't involve women in your scientific projects, in the design of your scientific projects, and in the solutions that you offer, you're not going to get the right solutions, and you're not actually going to get good science. So it's now become clear that women must be involved. Women must absolutely be involved if you want to grow your economy. As we will hear later, I think, you'll see that Rwanda is exceptional in terms of your commitment to women in general in society and also in science and development. So you really should be very congratulated in Rwanda for, I think you're outstanding in terms of your understanding of the issues women face and your government's commitment to overcoming those challenges. So what we're going to do, introduce to you in the first part of our afternoon here, is these 4 studies that were undertaken in these 4 countries. They are based on data that already exists. What happens in these countries, there are some things that these countries have in common, and there are some things that are quite specific, and you will see the different examples as we come to them. But the countries, as you know, are quite unique. Ethiopia, for example, has never been colonized. I think is very proud of this fact, and also has thousands of years of written history with its own script and language. And often I see already, as I came into Rwanda, the publicity around Ethiopia is all about origins and celebrating origins. So Ethiopia has a strong sense of a long, long history. Kenya and Uganda, both British colonies from the late 19th century through to the 1960s, but with very different experiences of both colonization and independence. In Kenya, there are many, many white settlers, whereas in Uganda, there are these kind of indigenous monarchies who have transformed the society. Rwanda, as we know, was annexed by the Belgians after World War I, and then antagonisms between ethnic groups led to genocide in 1994, and then you've had this exceptional 2 decades of peace and reconciliation, which has also been very, very important for the gender aspects. Just to say also briefly that what these studies can do, when you have data that tells you the position of women in society, you can identify the strengths and weaknesses in that society, and then you can set about finding some solutions. And these kinds of reports need to go to the policymakers, they need to go to government ministers, and then government ministers can actually change the way that things are done. Some of the common themes that you'll hear about here through the reports are, for example, even though there may be very good policies in place, the actual implementation of those policies can be very difficult because of traditional assumptions and cultural traditions. Health status of women across these countries is always much more difficult than men's health status. For example, do you know that there are 3 times more women living with AIDS in East Africa than men? Do you know that that women are 2 times more likely to die from infectious diseases, especially tuberculosis and malaria, for example? And do you know about gender-based violence in this region is extremely dominant, and in some cases the assumption people don't even believe it's a crime. Female genital mutilation is very high in Ethiopia, and then in Kenya, non-existent in Rwanda, 1% in Uganda. Sexual abuse and trafficking of young girls, again, is highest in Uganda. Abortion is illegal in 3 of these countries, and it's not clear exact status in a 4th. Because of this, there are very high death rates from illegal abortion. There's growing contraceptive use, but there's also quite a lot of resistance from men, for example, in Uganda, to using contraception. So we're going to get now some sense of these different societies. And I asked each of these women to read these reports that we had commissioned and to think about how they reflect on their own experience of their own countries and their journeys as women scientists. And our first presenter is Hirut Getachew from Ethiopia. And she is currently at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa with an OWSD PhD fellowship, which she was awarded in 2015, and she's just finishing her data collection stage. And here it works on the application of crop models to assess the impact of climate change. And she describes herself as an agricultural meteorologist.
Thank you, Tonia. Good afternoon, all of you. Yeah, I'm working on the maize crop. I'm a crop modeler and agrometeorologist. My research is specifically simulating maize crop for future climate change adaptation and to predict maize yield for future scenarios in a tropical Ethiopian condition. So by saying this, let me directly go to my presentation. So the presentation title is this one. This presentation based on the report of assessment of the national assessment report. So it's supported by that report. So let me start the Ethiopian women in science challenges. So when we see the first thing, the social status. So the Ethiopian women have several problems or challenges in their life career. So as you can see here from the slide, they carried a lot of things on their shoulders. They are coming from the long distance to feed their own animals. This is also a burden for them. The other one is also the girls. They are fetching water from long distance. Okay, they are most of the time they are occupied with domestic workers. So when we see also, this is another side of Ethiopia. Again, they are fetching water in the long distance. So women in general in Ethiopia, they have no time for their education. So this limits them to pursue their education based on their interest. So this is one of the challenge. And the other one is women also are responsible for giving care for the family, again giving care for the kids in the house. So almost there is no or little time of pursuing their education directly or indirectly. So they are almost in a busy way. And when we see the economic status, so most of the Ethiopian women have involved in informal sectors because they are not more well educated. So the employed are in the informal sectors like this. They are knitting their things and they sell their products to gain their own income. And when we look also girls here, okay, they are women or females sorting green coffee bean. This is the informal working place. So they don't have time even to think about education, to pursue or to continue their higher education in this case. So these are the challenges women in science in my country condition. When we go to the women participation in politics, so based on the National Assessment Report, now in Ethiopia these days, the number of women increases in the parliament, at least around 25.5% as compared to the previous decades. So this is a good achievement. So our government can do some political policies to participate, to empower women in the political issues and in the parliament seats. And when we see the women in science, you can see girls are in the primary school. So in Ethiopia, females in the primary schools, the number of females is high. But when it comes to higher level, higher education, these numbers become less. And based on this, our government designed what you call it the 70 to 30 ratio, the enrollment of women scientists to the university. So 70% science and 30% social and humanities. So after that policy, the number of women increases in the higher level of education, but still a problem. They are not reached until graduation time. Why? Because the women are not supported by their instructors, because this science field by itself has some strengths. So they need support. They need also from the administrator and the faculty department and female mentors also. So because of this reason, the number of females now increases in the higher level of education. But previously, it has somehow, the number is less. And when we see also this side, the involvement of women in computer science, okay? She's mentoring the students. So nowadays, it increases this practice in my country. This is the trend. So when we see the policy environment, so the Ethiopian government has taken to provide major changes on the constitutional problem of gender discrimination and the guarantee of equal rights to women. The other one is affirmative action policies on economic, education, and political settings. And the third one is the ratification of international women's, children, and human rights treaties and various civil service forms. But the problem is on the point of implementation. Still, it needs some work to implement these policies and to make more empowering women and to involve into the science part and to activate this side and to have in the sustainable development part. So this is all what I have. Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure to present about on the barriers and opportunities for women. Am I there? Hello? Okay, so to present about the barriers and opportunities for women in science in Kenya using the National Assessment Report that Dr. Tonya has just talked about as a basis. My PhD work was on materials for spintronics application. Generally, these materials are aimed to make electronic devices faster and smaller by increasing the density of storage. So as more research is ongoing, we're getting our devices becoming smaller and smaller and faster, more efficient and more cost effective. I'll begin by giving a brief overview about the policy framework in Kenya. The 2010 Kenyan Constitution is one of the most progressive constitutions. It recognizes the role of science, technology, and innovation to raise productivity and efficiency levels, as well as to accelerate the economy. And in fact, in Kenya, we have about 96% mobile coverage, and that says something about the ability to communicate, as well as innovations such as mobile money and other innovations that use the mobile phones. We also have a national policy framework which seeks to promote gender and equality, and this has been used, this is aimed at addressing the systemic barriers experienced by women. We have what we call the two-thirds gender rule that does not allow any one gender to be more than two-thirds in appointments in various places. We also have some international treaties ratified in Kenya. For example, the one on discrimination against women. This is recognized, it is signed and ratified. And the famous Maputo Protocol that was famous, that was really focused on reducing female genital mutilation. We also have the development blueprint for Kenya, which is the Vision 2030. And some of the policies it stands for is equality for all. And so it considers both genders. We also have quotas for female representation in government outlined in this policy. Am I audible? Okay. As well as the Kenya National Human Rights and Equality Commission that deals a lot, promotes gender equality. In Kenya, we have the Women Enterprise Fund aimed at improving the socio-economic status of women. We have the Sexual Offences Act that addresses the issue of sexual, to punish the offenders. And as well as we have the body that is responsible for admitting university students has a quota, has put a lower cutoff point for girls, so that they have that affirmative action that is aimed at encouraging girls. So we have we have good policies, I would say, but when we actually go to the ground, it is not quite enough to really have these policies, and this was captured in that assessment, which I can testify to being on the ground. And one of the main impediments to implementing this policy has been the cultural beliefs and practices. And what they were saying in this report that I found very intriguing and which I think would really work is that we need to have these policies accepted at the local level. And so they were suggesting that community-based approaches would be good, so that when the mindset of everyone is in line with improving the status of women, then there are better chances of supporting women in science and generally in as far as their social and economic status is concerned. A typical classroom in Kenya in a public school would look almost something like that. So somebody occupying, going through this system and probably ending at that first elementary level, which now is changing because of free subsidized education. We are having more enrollment. in education, but it was common before for someone to just go up to that level, and probably that would be the end. If you think of a girl who has gone through that level of education, then they would probably end up engaging more in agricultural activity as a means of livelihood, and their social and economic status would probably look similar to what is over there. And if the person now goes further to the next level of education, you see now here we have some girls in a physics laboratory doing some physics. So once they finish this level, then probably they would become teachers or be employed in government agencies, and they would have a life similar to what you're seeing over there, where they'd have to balance between their jobs, and they would also have to take care of their children. They're here, I think they're lining up. So you can imagine the time they're sitting there taking care of the children. Obviously, their male counterparts are busy developing their careers, and therefore, this kind of points to the challenges that women will face right from that stage, because they have to divide their time between many other things, and career development will probably be the last thing in their mind. And so you have a lot of untapped potential in many of these women, because they're out there, they're busy, they don't have the time, they have other concerns. So when a woman so any of these women here could be having very nice scientific ideas in their mind, but they have other things that need more urgent attention. However, we have a person, this picture depicts somebody who is saying, we can do it. And they're saying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. When such a person who was having that kind of a life meets maybe a funder or a supervisor or a mentor, they will probably open their eyes and say, okay, look, you also can do this. And they can now probably develop their careers and even begin now to contribute in research and in science. And such places would be like, this was a career development workshop for women in physics. This was in ICTP. The reason I've put this photo here is that I got an opportunity to attend this workshop. And by the time I was attending this workshop, I had no idea that I would pursue my PhD studies. I had many odds, like age, because I first did what you saw in the previous slides. And by that time, age had caught up, and well, I was thinking I had this desire, but how do I get to do it? But what happened is that I found a person like this over there. One of them was our very own Dr. Tonya here, the OWSD coordinator. Because she made her presentation on OWSD, I heard it for the very first time. And what she said OWSD does for a woman's career is exactly what I needed. So I heard about it then. And in this conference, I also met my PhD mentor, who later guided me in the area of spintronics. So you see, this becomes the giants upon which this is actually the workshop. And you can see me right there. And so what happens is that when people get in contact with these mentors and these funders who tell them, all right, who tell them that now you actually can make it, then they begin to engage in research. And you see now the focus is changed. Of course, this was not the same person in the previous picture, but you can see now they begin now to look more research oriented, more scientific. And now they get into the research world. And once they are completed, they now begin to be women with a higher economic status. They can make decisions. They can take political positions. They can make policies that can, encourage and help women. This is an OWSD fellow. Any Kenyan would recognize this face. She was the cabinet secretary of environment. And she rose to that level, I believe, because she got an opportunity to exploit her potential, and thanks to OWSD for that career. Now, a group of scientists, women, have come together in Kenya, and they're also trying to see what they can do. They have received help from OWSD. Some of them are not really OWSD fellows, but they identify with the objectives of OWSD, and we've come together and we are saying we also can help. We can begin at that level. So we have this group. This is not all. There are actually many more than this, and they come together and we are busy trying to come up with the OWSD chapter, and hopefully in September you should come for this conference because we are trusting that OWSD will come and launch our chapter then. And you're all very welcome to Kenya in September. Thank you very much.
PowerPoint. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Dr. Tonya has told you, I'll talk. All right. Yeah, I bring for you talking points, mainly based on the research that was done by WOGNET, a Ugandan women organization, in collaboration with the OWSD, really focusing on identifying gaps, the challenges that make women not reach far in science, innovations, and in technology. So the issues in Uganda, much like what you have heard, Kenya, Ethiopia, and I will not be repeating those things that have been said. I'm just going to pull out a few things that maybe have not been emphasized on much. And I'll start with one, traditional norms, attitudes, and belief. You know? Are you getting me from the back? You're now getting me. Sorry. Okay, so I start with the traditional norms, beliefs, and attitude. You know, we are all coming from some families of sorts, and we have the male and female gender at home. But you realize that right from the beginning, early childhood, the girl child is not given much attention. Resources are not put on them like they are given to the boys. And you find out that, you know, science, technology, for somebody to come up to be a scientist, they must actually be serious with education right from the word go. So if at early childhood level, the girl children are left at home, with a lot of absenteeism, you find out that they actually drop out. School dropout rate is higher for the girl child. This is a case in Uganda that really has so much retarded advancement of women in science, technology, and innovations. And we need to address that. Maybe, I don't know how much the issue is here in Rwanda, but I know, like Dr. Tonya says, you're doing well. But this issue is still there in most of African settings. The girl child is not given much attention, much focus, and priority for them to develop as scientists. And so you end up finding imbalances in that. The other issue is the policy neutrality. Much as you can see from the presentations of the other two presenters, they have told much of the policies that are bringing gender empowerment is actually recent policies, 2005, 2011. But you see that it takes long to develop as a scientist and as an innovator, you know. So the olden policies did not really focus on bringing balances and favoring women to grow into, you know, big contributors in science, innovations, and technology. So there was policy neutrality in the past in Uganda, although very recent developments are really focusing on empowering the women. But you realize that those earlier policy neutrality that did not favor the women, you go to our parliament, you'll find fewer women. You go to the education system, like currently, the Makerere University Staff Association is mainly composed of men, 100%. So you can imagine what kind of policy these guys are going to make for staff and even girl child education at higher institutions of learning. The parliament, the education system is still having much leadership on the men just because of the policy neutrality that did not really look at the issues of women. What must be given to a woman in order to make them develop as, you know, scientists. Then the other issue is access to resources. Of course, you need resources. You need to go to good schools. You need to have, you know, resources. You need to buy equipment. From the beginning, science involves much of, you know, lab work, experiments, and you need to have instrument sets. But at an early stage, you realize that much attention is not given to this. In Uganda, we have what we call the universal primary education system, and parents send children to school and they don't buy for them anything. And they end up performing very poorly in science. And so that even the men, you find that there are more students in the humanities. Over 50% of university education, you find them going to the arts and the humanities. And then if you go down to find out, okay, of the very few who are at the university, how many are women doing sciences? There are very few. In my class was 4 women to 27 boys. And it's even getting worse. In the medical school, it's even much worse. So the issue of having resources to keep you in the scientific field, it really is still a problem that needs to be addressed to advance the issue of women developing in the science field. Then research, you realize that even up to today, the scientific research or research being done to improve on development and even to contribute to, you know, we have this African Union vision. We want more scientists in Africa. We want many of them to become women. But when you go down to how is the information being collected to inform the strategies that would be used to bring about such balances in having women, many women, being scientists and contributing to innovations, you find out that the data collection process is so biased against the woman, because they will go at household level using the social survey research, and information is collected mainly from the household heads, who will be men. Even if they are not household, if they are relatives who are staying with you at home, and a researcher comes, they will take the information from the man. Now, such policies are not going to help. It's not, I believe it's not only in Uganda, but even the African Union vision for Africa of having many women participate in science and innovations is not going to be realized, because unless such injustices are addressed, I think your university students, many of you, and you're going to do your work, research, when you're developing your research methods, your supervisors, because many of them are not women, they're not going to question you if you don't bring the gender issues from the beginning. So you bring in information which should be very useful for development, but they are going to bring in inequality in what comes up. So that is still a problem in Uganda. The other one is leadership. These have been talked about by my colleagues. I will not add on that, but there are very few women in leadership positions, in decision-making positions, who are actually scientists. I'm lucky. Last year I got appointed by the government to be the vice chairperson of the board of the National Environment Management Authority. This is a conservation agency that actually makes sure that developments in Uganda leave less ecological footprints and they are sustainable. And there's a gender strategy, and we are in the board. I'm advocating so much for, you know, the development strategy to make sure that women issues, and not only women but also children, are well catered for. So thanks to OWSD support, if I didn't have a PhD, they wouldn't have given me that position. And if I was not educated, and if I didn't go into a unique field, they would not have considered me for that position. But I must say that as the board, we are responsible for making policies, environmental policies that will be implemented in the country. And you know, they say Uganda has very many good environmental policies that have been adopted by most of the African countries, actually. So we are going to continue making good ones, which are going to be gender sensitive, thanks to OWSD support, which has made me reach that position. And I'm still looking to...
Because even it's not fair to, you know, to live your life there aside and you continue your career unless it is your choice. Otherwise, if you feel like you have no time for your family, if you're planning to do so, you have no excuses to do in one way. That's one point. But what I can add here, believe me, those women who can actually balance to, they are strong women. There is also confidence gap. Here in the confidence gap, let me give you one example. At my university, when I was doing my MSc, there is one lady, she was doing her PhD, I was doing my master's. She got pregnant. She went to her supervisor. She told her, "Oh, supervisor, I'm pregnant." And she replied to her, "Are you serious?" I was really feeling any confidence anymore. It was like, why this? Is this really a mistake to get pregnant when you have a husband? So it's not really like you have to do one thing and you feel like you have no right to get pregnant if you're planning to do so. So that's one thing that really, at a certain point, I myself felt any confidence. And another thing is like when you are in a lab, when you're doing science, you're supposed to be in the lab most of the time. You are doing some stuff. A blind man there, he can do his stuff in one day, which will require you probably 1 week because you multitask, you know. You are calling home if you're not with your family. You're calling home, oh, you're sick, your kid is sick. Oh, you're feeling down like for the next 5 hours. So those things really will discourage you in such way that you want to do things in a proper time planning, if I can call it. The other thing is you may feel unconfident with your supervisor or your mentor. Sometimes your supervisor will ask you, "Do you have your family?" You will say yes, and he can tell you, "Are you sure you will gonna finish this?" And you feel like, why these such questions? She thinks that, oh, my supervisor was a woman. She thinks that I'm not really, I don't know what I'm doing or why I came here. So those such questions will really make you feeling like you don't have your confidence anymore. The other point is a few women in a graduate school. When you're doing your career, there are some people, you know, at a higher level, you're looking at them. So in science and technology, few of them reach higher level. You will ask yourself why. Why not many of them are there? You will start questioning yourself, am I able to go that higher? Where some of them didn't make it. So those some of challenges which will actually start making you feeling that you are not you are not in your career as it should be. The other point is family life. Here, family life really is a challenge. Like, it's a real challenge. When it comes to family, it's a challenge for a married woman or a girl. For a married woman, let's say, for instance, in our country, we don't have, I don't know if sandwich is working here with the OWSD. I'm not sure. Sandwich program. Okay. But even sandwich program, it requires you 6 months abroad. So you have to make a decision here. You don't know if you're going to leave your family. Of course, you have to. But your kid, at least they have to be a little bit, not that babies. So you have to wait. You have to wait in such a way that if you have decided to set your family first, you have to wait for your babies to grow a bit up. So the age limit will come. Maybe you'll be 40 years. So with 40 years old, you feel like, do I have to do like PhD really? At a certain point, you feel selfish. Do I have to leave my kids? So they are starting in primary school. So I'm not sure with the education. So maybe master's is enough if you have it. Maybe let's say I have to stop here. I have to look for this kid to start a school. If you go abroad, you feel like you are selfish. You're going to hold those PhDs, and maybe your kid behind in the country where you left them behind, they are suffering. Maybe if you are lucky enough, your husband is taking care of them. So I think those are I summarize those 4 challenges like those. And I think it's not common in Rwanda. It's all over the world when it comes to women in science. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm Consolatrice Bdilindiro. I'm a student from Computer Science Level 2 in here. My question is about not more basing. I want to base on what she said, Ariette, for the last time. She was giving some challenges that women faces here in Rwanda. We also started an initiative, it's called Broadcasters of ICT, where we base ICT students to work on their activities or to perform what they are studying in practice. So we organized an event, it was called Girls Boot Camp. It was an open application for women. So ladies were coming from every school in School of ICT, so there was a training for programming. But the problem is this. Sometimes it's not about what others think of us, but it's about what we think of ourselves. You could find some way, like it was a 5-day training. But the bad thing was this. A student was coming for the first day. She's a lady. She was given an introduction to Java. And the next day she's not coming. You call her. Hey, Consolatrice, why didn't you come? She said, oh, come on. I had to go home early. It was raining. So you get like, it was raining. So you needed to stay and wait it after raining. So you just get to know, we organized a conversation after the training. We wanted to know deep what's the problem. So what I saw most in women is not basically about what others think of us. Sometimes African you have a problem. It's not basically African. If I'm doing something good, if I'm doing something with my own hands, and I show you, maybe I made this photo by myself, and I showed it to you. You tell, oh, this photo is bad. It looks weird. So the problem is this. You don't think that she's giving you a feedback. You think that she's attacking you. So that's the problem we're facing. We are not ready to overcome. So no matter what, if the man is not coming for the presentation, call upon women to present and let them. After the impact, they would come. It doesn't need to be what others think of us, but we need to be beyond what others are thinking of us. No matter what. I don't care what you're doing for me. I just do it. When the